They served me last. Cold beans, overcooked chicken, and not even a slice of bread. Linda placed the plate in front of me without a glance, already halfway back to her seat at the big table. I didn't say anything. I never do. But something inside me noted it. Noted how they had all eaten hot meals while I, the owner of this house, was given mine as an afterthought. Like an extra. Like a burden. The big table used to be mine. Walnut wood, polished every Saturday morning. John scratched his initials underneath when he was 10, thinking I wouldn't find out. He forgot I cleaned every surface. Now it was Linda's table, set with her dishes and her napkin rings, the ones with little gold bows that I never liked. They'd brought it all when they moved in temporarily. That was 15 months ago. I ate slowly, not from comfort, but to prolong the silence. My small plate clinked quietly at the side counter, away from the others. The only sound near me was the soft hum of the fridge and the distant scrape of cutlery from the table. I watched the back of John's head. His hair had thinned like his father's, but he still thought of himself as young and commanding. When Linda spoke, he nodded. When I spoke, not that I did much anymore, he looked at his phone. They talked about a new water filter, about replacing the ceiling fan in the living room. None of it ran by me. No one asked. They hadn't for a long time. Linda handled those things now. She'd started putting little sticky notes on the fridge, reminders, rules, shopping lists. I wasn't on any of the lists, but the notes always said we and our home, our bills, our space, my house. After dinner, Linda announced she'd clean up later, and they all wandered off. John to the couch, their grandson Derek to his room, and Linda to the laundry. I stood up and took my empty plate to the sink. I didn't mind washing it. I've washed dishes every day for 60 years. What I minded was the glance Linda gave me when she passed. Like I should be grateful. Like I was lucky they still let me live here. I dried my hands slowly, then walked to my room. Or what was left of it. The corner had boxes now, labeled Derek's College Supplies. A bookshelf had appeared 2 weeks ago without anyone asking me. My sewing chair was gone. I had nowhere to sit but the bed. I sat on the edge and looked around. There's a moment, and I don't know how to explain it, when something inside you tilts, like a glass that's been filling slowly, unnoticed, and then one more drop makes it overflow. Tonight, that drop was a plate of cold food. Nothing dramatic, just enough. I got up and opened the small chest at the foot of the bed. Inside, beneath old quilts and photo albums, was a worn leather folder. Brown, cracked at the edges. Derek once called it Grandma's treasure chest. He had no idea how close he was. I pulled it out and set it on the bed. My hands didn't tremble, not anymore. I opened it slowly. There, in their plastic sleeves, were the documents. The deed to the house, the payment schedule from 1984, the mortgage release letter, all of it. My name on every line. Maeve Eldridge, sole owner. I looked at the last paper, a notarized copy from my husband's will. He died in 2002. Make sure they never forget, he'd told me once, tapping his fingers on this exact folder. This is yours, no matter what. And they had forgotten. But I hadn't. They think I forget things. They whisper it like a worry. She's been forgetting lately. Or maybe she's not safe with the stove anymore. But I remember everything. I remember the day we bought this house. I remember the man who came with the key, how he shook my hand like I was invisible and handed the deed to John. Derek was 2 months old in a carrier. John handed it right over to me. She paid the down payment, he said. It's hers. I've forgotten nothing. So when Linda came into the kitchen the next morning with a tired sigh and said, Maeve, did you unplug the fridge again? Everything defrosted? I didn't answer. Not right away, because I hadn't unplugged it. I hadn't touched a thing. But I was the easiest one to blame. I stood near the sink, wiping my hands on a towel, my eyes on the window where the morning light fell across the garden. That patch of soil used to be roses. Now it was a mess of dry pots and a folding chair no one ever used. Maeve? Linda's voice was sharper. Did you hear me? I didn't touch the fridge, I said quietly. She gave a tight laugh, like someone humoring a child. Then it must have unplugged itself. These things happen. John walked in just then, rubbing his eyes. What's going on? Your mother unplugged the fridge again, Linda said over her shoulder. John didn't look at me. Is the food okay? It's all ruined. Chicken, vegetables, even the ice cream. He sighed. And that was it. No one asked me again. No one tried to check the cord, or consider that Derek had come in last night with a gaming console, unplugged something, and forgot to plug it back in. I saw him do it. But what was the point? I was already marked as the forgetful one. I cleaned the counters while Linda loudly discussed which groceries needed replacing. She said the word "we" 10 times. We have to be more careful. We can't afford waste. We need better habits. But there was no "we" when she slid the receipt onto the table later that day and said, If you're going to use things, Maeve, you need to help replace them. I looked at the paper. $76. My pension was small, but I had savings. I always have. Still, the way she said it, like I was freeloading in my own home, that was new. I went back to my room. Derek's college boxes were still in the corner, unopened. He hadn't even started packing. The bookshelf now held John's old law textbooks. He never finished law school. Worked in HVAC for years. Nothing wrong with that. But the books had always stayed in boxes in their garage, until now. Now they were on my shelf. That afternoon I tried to bake. It was a habit. Thursday was baking day, always had been. I pulled out flour, sugar, the bowl I kept under the sink. Then I reached for the pie tin, but it was gone. I checked the cabinet. All new pans, non-stick, fancy, arranged like a catalog. I didn't touch them. Linda came in as I was rummaging through a drawer. Looking for something? My pie tin. Oh, she said. I think we donated some of the older things last month. There wasn't much space. I didn't approve that. She gave me a long look. Maeve, you've been a little scattered lately. We thought you'd appreciate the help. The help. I sat down at the small kitchen table, the one they'd pushed into the corner for me. It used to be in the sunroom, for plants. Now it was where I ate, away from the others, facing the wall. I didn't say anything, not because I didn't have words, but because the silence was sharper, cleaner. I thought of the folder upstairs. I thought of the name typed clean and bold on that deed. Mine. Let them whisper. Let them assume. I know what's mine. They'd moved into the living room next, not gradually, not with discussion, but like a tide coming in, covering more ground each week. First, it was just Linda's magazines on the coffee table. Then John's golf trophies appeared on the mantel. Then Derek's gaming console wires wound across the floor like ivy. Last week I came in and found my armchair gone. Storage, John had said. There wasn't space. That chair had been mine since '84. I bought it after my first gallbladder surgery. High back, Firm arms, a pale green upholstery that didn't match anything but felt like home. I didn't argue. I went to the hallway and sat on the bench where we used to keep shoes. They keep that bench empty now. It's too cluttered, Linda says. I noticed my cross-stitch on the wall was gone too, the one I'd done the year we paid off the mortgage. Bless this house. It had hung above the fireplace for almost 2 decades. I found it 2 days later in a plastic tub in the garage. The glass was cracked. They didn't ask before changing the drapes either, or the cushions, or the rugs. All gray and white now. Minimalist, Linda says. Clean lines, no color, no warmth, no trace of me. That evening, I made myself a cup of tea. No one offered. No one noticed. They were all in the living room watching a loud movie, the kind where the music never stops and people are always yelling. I sat at my kitchen corner and stirred honey into my mug. Linda passed through and paused. Maeve, could you use a coaster? That's a new table. I looked down. It was the same old Formica I'd had since 1992, just scrubbed shiny by me. But I nodded, reached for the little woven coaster, and placed my mug gently on it. She smiled tightly and went back to her movie. That night, I went to bed early. But when I got there, my room wasn't just cluttered with boxes anymore. Derek had brought in a small desk. It was pushed into the corner by the window. "What's this?" I asked him the next morning. "Oh, Mom said I could use this room for studying. Better light." I looked at the corner where my rocking chair used to be. It had vanished too. "You're in here now?" I asked. My voice was calm. He shrugged. "Just during the day. You're always napping anyway. Always napping." I opened my dresser later and found half my scarves gone. In their place, a row of t-shirts and men's socks. I didn't ask. I didn't argue. Instead, I sat on the bed and looked around the room I had slept in for 46 years. The room where I nursed my son after his birth. Where I cried quietly the night my husband died. Where I stitched quilts and wrote grocery lists and rubbed Vicks on my chest in flu season. Now it was a shared space, but only one side had my things. I opened the drawer of my nightstand. Tucked beneath an old novel was a card, a birthday card from 3 years ago. To Grandma, the real heart of this family. It was from Abby, my granddaughter. She'd written in tiny letters around the edges of the card because she ran out of space. "I miss your baking. I miss your voice. I miss you." I held it in my hands for a long time. They say you shouldn't hold on to the past, but sometimes the past is the only thing that still recognizes you. I found the note pinned to the fridge with a sunflower magnet, handwritten in neat blue ink. House guidelines, it read at the top. Underneath, a list. Not a long one, but it didn't need to be. Please don't use the washer after 7 p.m. It disrupts Derek's studying. All perishables must be labeled. Unmarked items may be discarded. Common areas should be kept tidy. Personal items will be relocated. Meals are coordinated by Linda. If you need something specific, please write it down. If you're unsure about any house decisions, please speak to John or Linda first. At the bottom, thank you for helping us keep our shared space harmonious. Shared space. I stared at that word for a long time. My hand rested on the edge of the counter where, just a year ago, I'd rolled out pie crust for Abby's birthday. Now, even the fridge had been colonized. My name wasn't on the milk carton. I hadn't labeled the butter. I opened the fridge slowly. A Post-it note on the orange juice. For breakfast, use only. Another on the casserole. Dinner, don't touch. I didn't say a word. Just closed the door as softly as I could. Later that afternoon, Linda was on the phone in the living room, her voice high and cheerful. "Yes, it's going well," she was saying. "It's not a huge place, but we're making it work. Got everything running smoothly. Derek's thriving. No, she's quiet mostly. Keeps to herself. She, not Maeve, not Mom. Just she." When I walked in to get my shawl from the coat rack, she smiled like nothing was wrong, as if I hadn't heard, as if I weren't real. That evening, John came into the kitchen and said, "We're thinking of rearranging the garage. Make space for Linda's gardening stuff. Some of your things might have to go." "What things?" I asked. "Oh, old boxes. That sewing machine. A few crates of your books. We can donate what's still usable." I nodded. He took that as agreement. After he left, I went out to the garage alone, turned on the bare bulb overhead. There was my sewing machine, dusty, but fine. My husband's toolbox beside it. A stack of cardboard boxes, each one marked with my handwriting. Inside, holiday linens, old letters, photos, recipes, not junk, not disposable. I stood there for a while, arms folded, watching my breath in the cool air. I thought of my mother's words, long ago. If you let people rewrite your place, soon they'll erase your name altogether. When I came back inside, the fridge light cast the guidelines note in stark relief. 5 neat rules. A blueprint of how to be small, quiet, absent. I went to the drawer where we used to keep pens and tape. Still there. One small act of resistance. I picked up a red pen and walked back to the fridge. I crossed out the heading. Instead of house guidelines, I wrote in a clear, steady hand, Maeve's house. Temporary guests. And then I made tea. I heard the car pull into the driveway before I saw her. Abby never honked or texted first. She just came. Like people used to. I was peeling potatoes by the window when the old blue Civic rolled to a stop. She stepped out, wearing a denim jacket and a backpack, her hair in a messy braid. The porch light was already on, though it was barely past 5. She knocked gently, out of habit. Then she opened the door and peeked in. "Grandma?" I turned, wiping my hands on a towel. "In the kitchen, sweetheart." Abby smiled when she saw me. That wide, unguarded smile that made her eyes crinkle at the corners. I should have called. I was nearby. You never have to call. She dropped her bag by the coat rack and came to hug me. Her arms were firm. She smelled like bookstore air and something minty. "Are you busy?" "Just dinner prep. Sit. You hungry?" "I could eat," she said, grinning. I pulled another plate from the cupboard. The same old set. Faded blue trim, one small chip on the edge. Linda doesn't use them anymore. She keeps her new white dishes in the high cabinet. I use mine when no one's home. Abby sat at the little kitchen table, my table, and glanced toward the living room. "Where is everyone?" "Out. John had a client call. Linda went with him. Derek's at a friend's." "Quiet then?" "Yes," I said, placing the plates down. "Blessedly." We ate without rushing. I gave her the good part of the chicken, the one with the crispier skin. She asked about my hydrangeas, gone dry now, end of season, and told me about her part-time job at the college library. She'd just finished midterms. "I'm surviving," she said, which in November is basically a win. I laughed, then looked at her carefully. "You doing okay?" She paused, then nodded. "Yeah, I think I am." When we finished, she offered to do the dishes. I waved her off. "No, sit with me a while." She did. I poured tea the way I always do, dark, strong, with just enough honey. She drank it slowly, watching the steam rise. Then she glanced toward the hallway. "Grandma," she said, "is everything all right here?" I met her eyes. "Why do you ask?" She looked uncomfortable, suddenly careful. It feels different. Like you're not quite here. Like they've taken over." I stayed quiet. "You used to tell me when things bothered you," she said softly. "It's not just one thing," I said after a moment. "It's the way they walk around like they built the walls, the way I get corrected for using my own stove, the way I'm called forgetful when I know exactly what's going on." Abby's jaw tightened. "I thought it was just me. I visited 2 weeks ago and Linda barely looked at me, said, 'Don't mind the clutter, we're adjusting to a smaller place.' As if this wasn't your home." I nodded. She reached into her backpack and pulled something out. A small tin. "I brought you these. The lemon drops. The kind you like." I took the tin, my fingers brushing hers. "Thank you." We sat for a while longer, sipping tea in the quiet kitchen. Before she left, Abby stood in the doorway, her eyes on mine. "You know you don't have to let this continue." I didn't reply. She leaned forward and kissed my cheek. "You're still you. Don't let them forget that." After she was gone, I stood in the doorway for a long time, holding the tin. Lemon drops. A small thing, but something meant for me. I opened the drawer where I kept important things. Among the pens and scissors, I slipped the tin inside, next to the house deed. Then I closed the drawer slowly. Let them keep changing the curtains, rearranging the shelves, rewriting the rules. They haven't seen what I still remember how to do. She didn't even lower her voice when she said it. It was morning, a Thursday. The kind where the sunlight falls through the front window just right, and you almost forget how far things have gone. I was in the kitchen, folding a dish towel. Linda stood by the counter with a mug of coffee she hadn't offered to anyone but herself. John was checking his phone, pacing the dining room. Derek wasn't awake yet. "Maeve," Linda began, setting her mug down like she was about to negotiate a real estate deal. "We've been thinking." I didn't look up. I didn't need to. She kept going. "We know this arrangement has been less than ideal for everyone. And it's clear the house doesn't really accommodate 3 adults and a teenager comfortably. There just isn't enough room." I kept folding. "I mean, you've said it yourself," she added quickly, as if softening the blow. "It's hard, right? The noise, the energy, the pace." John still hadn't said a word. Then she said it. "We've looked into some options. There's a really lovely assisted living facility on the edge of town, River Pines. Maybe you've heard of it." I stopped folding. "Nice rooms, lots of activities," she continued. "It would give you privacy, structure, medical care if you ever need it." I turned to face her. "You're sending me to a home." "Not sending," she said, lifting her eyebrows like I was being difficult. "We're suggesting. We think it would be good for you. You wouldn't have to worry about all this." "All this?" I echoed. "Cooking, laundry, being woken up by Derek's gaming. I mean, it's not ideal for you. And frankly, Maeve, you're not getting younger." John finally looked up, his eyes darting between us. "It's just a thought, Mom. You'd have your own space. It's not like we're throwing you out." "No, not like that at all." "We even took a tour," Linda added. "They had a room available with a little porch. You could bring your plants. Doesn't that sound nice?" I let the silence stretch long enough that Linda took a step back. Then I said, "Are you offering to pay for this option?" They exchanged a glance. "Well," John started, "they do offer financial assistance, and your pension." "My pension wouldn't cover a month there." "We could help with the paperwork. Linda said quickly. But yes, it would mostly be you. But think of it as investing in your own peace. My hands didn't tremble. I didn't raise my voice. But I looked them both in the eye, something I hadn't done in weeks. I see, I said. You'd like me to leave my home so you can have more space. Linda gave a tight smile. It's not about us. It's about what's best for you. And the room, I said. At River Pines? It's available now? She nodded. But they won't hold it for long. We should decide soon. I'll think about it, I said. And I did. I thought about it as I washed the single teacup I'd used, as I stepped carefully over Derek's sneakers in the hallway, as I passed the bookshelf where my cookbooks used to be, now stuffed with Linda's real estate folders. I thought about it when I opened the drawer in my room that used to hold my scarves and now held Derek's chargers and notebooks. But mostly, I thought about it when I opened the box at the back of my closet that afternoon, the one wrapped in an old towel. Inside, every receipt, every tax bill, every letter from the mortgage lender, paid off in 2003. In my name. Only mine. My husband had insisted, keep it all together. Don't let anyone pretend it's theirs. They forgot I still had it. Or maybe they assumed I didn't know what it meant. They thought I was fading. But I wasn't. I was just waiting for the right moment. The folder was exactly where I'd left it. Under the quilt, inside the cedar chest, wrapped in the yellow dish towel with the frayed corner. The smell of cedar hit me as I opened the lid. Sharp, dry, familiar. It hadn't been touched in years. I unfolded the towel slowly, as if it were something fragile, sacred. Inside, the brown leather folder. Worn at the corners, soft like old gloves. My name was embossed faintly on the cover. Maeve Eldridge. I sat on the edge of the bed and opened it. The papers were in perfect order. I'd always kept them that way. Deed first, purchase agreement, mortgage timeline, discharge statement, tax records. Every paper signed, stamped, verified. No gaps, no guesswork. Every single line bore my name, not John's, not Linda's, mine, Maeve Eleanor Eldridge. I remembered the day we closed on the house, 1984. It was raining. We wore plastic bags over our shoes so the mud wouldn't ruin the realtor's carpet. Paul, my husband, had held my hand tight as we signed. He whispered, "This is ours, Maeve. This is your nest. No matter what happens." I remembered every time we refinanced, carefully, never overreaching. Every check mailed, every stamp licked. We finished paying it off the year before Paul died. He made me promise to keep the papers safe, and I had. There was a letter tucked in the back. Paul's handwriting, faded, but still legible. If something ever goes sideways, remember, paper talks. People forget, twist, pretend, but paper talks straight. I folded the letter back in place, hands steady now. I sat still for a long while, listening to the faint hum of the house, a house that had become unfamiliar, like an old friend who'd forgotten your face. But not today. I reached for the phone and dialed the number I hadn't called in years, not since the accident settlement. "Dwyer and Hartwell, attorneys at law," said a bright voice on the line. "I need to speak with Mr. Hartwell," I said. "Tell him it's Maeve Eldridge." There was a pause. "Of course, Mrs. Eldridge." One moment. The same voice returned less than a minute later, more respectful now. "Mr. Hartwell will see you at 10 tomorrow morning. Will that work?" "Yes," I said. "That'll do just fine." After I hung up, I sat for a moment with the phone still in my hand. Then I stood, walked to the mirror, and looked at myself for the first time in days. My face had softened, yes, Time had taken its due. But the lines around my mouth were not from frowning. They were from holding things in, from letting silence speak where words would have shattered. I brushed my hair, put on a fresh blouse, picked out the coat Paul bought me the year before he died. Forest green, heavy wool, a little dated. I wore it anyway. Then I took the folder and set it by the door, ready for the morning. Let them think what they want. Let them sleep peacefully one more night. They believed I was fading. But what they failed to see, what they forgot, was that everything under this roof still had my name on it. And tomorrow, someone besides me would finally remember that too. I woke before the sun, not out of worry, out of clarity. There's a kind of quiet that only comes when you know exactly what you're about to do. No doubt. No rehearsals. Just a straight, steady path ahead. I sat at the edge of the bed, the brown leather folder on my lap, and watched the light shift slowly across the wall as the day began. I dressed carefully. Navy skirt, blouse with the pearl buttons, same coat from yesterday, hair combed back, neat, lipstick, a faint coral I hadn't worn in months. Not for vanity, for presence. At 9:10, I stepped out the door, folder in hand. No one heard me leave. Derek was still snoring. John and Linda were likely arguing over coffee. I didn't care. Not this morning. The law office was in a squat brick building by the post office. I hadn't been there in nearly 7 years, but the door still stuck the same way when you pulled it open. Inside, polished wood, a faint lemon smell. The receptionist looked up and smiled. "Mrs. Eldridge?" I nodded. "Mr. Hartwell is expecting you." He stood when I entered, still tall, though older now, his hair white around the temples. We'd worked together years ago after Paul's accident. He'd handled everything: settlement, trust, documents. He hadn't treated me like a little old lady back then. That was why I came back. "Maeve," he said, shaking my hand. "It's been a long time." "Not long enough," I replied quietly, and he nodded like he understood. I handed him the folder. He opened it slowly, reverently, like it was a relic. Page by page he examined it, nodding occasionally, tapping his pen once or twice. "I assume you're not here to reminisce," he said finally. "No," I said. "I want to prepare a formal notice of termination of informal tenancy. I want them out." "Understood." He didn't flinch. "Is there a lease? Any rental agreement?" "No. They're family. They came to stay after a job loss. I allowed it. It was supposed to be temporary." "And it's been?" 15 months. "Do they contribute financially?" "They buy groceries. That's all. The utilities are under my name. The house is paid off. Taxes current. I've never asked them for rent." He nodded again, already writing. "And they're now attempting to remove you from the home?" "They've suggested a care facility, not subtly." Hartwell's face hardened slightly. "Do they know you still have the deed?" "I don't think they remember. Or they assume I wouldn't know what to do with it." He looked up then, not with pity, with something closer to admiration. "Let's remind them." Over the next 40 minutes, we drafted everything: the notice, the delivery plan, the legal framework. I signed calmly, with a hand that didn't shake. He'd courier the letter in 2 days, give them the legal window, enough time to pack and pretend it was their choice. "And what about your protection in the meantime?" he asked. "I'll be fine." He raised an eyebrow. "Abby stops by. I have neighbors, and I'm not leaving my house." He smiled then, the kind that doesn't reach the eyes but respects your decision. You always were direct. I learned to be. When we finished, I stood to go. He held the door for me. Maeve, he said as I reached the lobby, this is going to be messy. No, I said. It's already been messy. Now it's going to be clean. I stepped back into the cold morning, air sharp and bright. I walked slowly to the bus stop, folder light in my hands. For once, I didn't feel like someone heading home. I felt like someone heading back to reclaim what was hers. They didn't notice I'd been out. When I stepped back through the door, the house smelled like bacon and burned toast. Derek's sneakers were in the hallway again, one on its side. I picked them up, placed them neatly by the wall. Linda was in the kitchen, humming tunelessly, phone tucked between her ear and shoulder. No, we haven't heard back yet, she was saying, but Maeve seemed agreeable, quiet. That's usually a good sign. I passed behind her silently. She didn't turn. John was in the living room, reading something on his tablet. He looked up as I walked through but didn't speak, just nodded, like I was a guest returning from an errand. I went to my room and shut the door. I set the folder down gently on my desk. Next to it, I placed a fresh manila envelope, one I'd picked up on the way back. Tomorrow, the courier would come. It would all begin. But tonight, I was still invisible. Around 4 o'clock, I heard Abby's voice, light, surprised. I didn't know you'd be home. They hadn't told her, apparently. I stood at the edge of the hallway, just outside the kitchen. I just thought I'd drop off some things Grandma asked for, Abby said. Her voice was neutral, polite. Where is she? She's resting, Linda said quickly. She's been a bit overwhelmed lately. Overwhelmed. I stepped into the kitchen. Abby turned toward me, a smile already forming. Hi, Grandma. Hello, darling. Linda blinked. Oh, you're up. I wasn't sleeping. Abby came to hug me. She smelled of fresh air and lavender shampoo. She pressed something into my hand, a paper bag folded neatly. The ginger chews you like, she whispered. And that tea blend you couldn't find last time. I squeezed her hand. Thank you, I said. She pulled back, then looked between me and Linda. Well, I should get going. Just wanted to drop that off. You're welcome to stay for dinner, Linda said, voice overly bright. We're making chicken stir-fry. Abby hesitated, then shook her head. Another time. As she passed me at the hallway, she said under her breath, You okay? Yes, I whispered back. I'm more than okay. She paused, searching my face, then nodded once and left. That night, we ate dinner in silence. Linda talked about a client's dog. John grunted about the heater in the car. No one asked me anything. No one noticed that I was barely touching my food. Later, as I rinsed my dish alone at the sink, Linda came to the doorway. You've been quiet today, she said lightly. Just tired, I answered. Maybe we should schedule a tour this weekend, at River Pines. They said a spot's still available. I turned off the tap, dried my hands. Then I looked at her. Don't worry about that, I said calmly. I have some things to handle first. She gave me that careful smile, the one she uses when she thinks I'm confused, but trying. Well, just let us know. I nodded. I will. When she left the room, I opened the drawer by the stove, pulled out a pen and a small notepad. I wrote a short list. Tea for Abby Call from Hartwell. Confirm delivery pack up Paul's tools. Bring inside print photo from 1984. Frame it. I looked at the list for a long time. Then I added one more line. Prepare my home for quiet again. Tomorrow, The papers would be in their hands, and with them, the reminder. They didn't move in here, they were let in. And that permission is about to be revoked. It rained the next morning, soft, steady, cleansing. I stood by the window with my tea and watched the water streak down the glass. The garden was quiet. No wind, no rustling branches. Just that calm, even kind of rain that makes you feel like the world is taking a breath. Inside the house, though, the air had started to shift. They didn't know yet. Not really. The envelope hadn't arrived. But something in me must have changed, because Linda kept glancing at me like she was trying to figure out what I was thinking. John asked twice if I was feeling okay. Fine, I told him. And I was. At 10 sharp, the doorbell rang. Linda called out, "I'll get it," already halfway to the front door. I stayed in the kitchen. She returned a minute later, holding the envelope like it might bite. "It's addressed to you," she said, setting it on the counter. "From a law office?" I dried my hands on the towel. "I know." "You know?" "I requested it." She stared at me. "Maeve, what is this about?" "Please open it," I said. "Both of you." John appeared from the hallway, a cereal bowl in hand. "What's going on?" "Mail," Linda said shortly, and handed him the envelope. He tore it open, pulled out the papers, and began to read. Slowly, then faster. I sat at the table. He was still reading when his face changed, just slightly, but I saw it. His jaw set, his eyebrows lifted, not in confusion, but in the realization that something long ignored had come back into focus. "This is," he said. "A formal notice," I finished for him. "You've been living here under my permission. That permission is being withdrawn." Linda's voice was thin. "Maeve, come on." "You said this wasn't working," I said, "that I seemed overwhelmed, that the house was too tight." "We didn't mean—" "You meant exactly what you said. You said it clearly." John was flipping through pages, his eyes scanning like he might find a loophole. "There's no lease," I told him. "You never paid rent. You've made yourselves at home. But it was never yours. And now it's time to go." "Where would we even go?" Linda demanded. I looked at her then, not with malice, just with truth. "You've had 15 months to figure that out." John sank into a chair, still reading. Linda tried to laugh. "Is this a joke? You'd throw out your own son?" "No," I said. "You already made it clear you didn't see me as a mother anymore, just a woman in the way." Linda's mouth opened, then closed. I stood, picked up my tea. "The notice gives you the legal time required. I suggest you use it wisely." And I walked out of the kitchen. Behind me, the room stayed quiet. The storm hadn't started yet, but the pressure in the air was rising, and this time, it wasn't mine to carry. They left the papers on the table for hours. No one touched them after that first read-through. I passed by twice that day, once to get tea, once to feed the dog they never asked if I wanted. And both times, the envelope sat unopened, as if the contents might change if ignored long enough. By dinner, the silence had thickened. No TV, no small talk, no Derek crashing around with his headphones on. He stayed mostly in his room, the door half shut. John made a sandwich and didn't eat it. Linda paced the living room, stopping often near the window, then pretending she hadn't been. I sat at the kitchen table, peeling an apple with the small paring knife I kept hidden in the drawer. Not because it was sharp, but because it was mine. Bought in 1978, right after Paul and I paid off the Buick. It fit my hand in a way newer knives never did. Finally, Linda spoke. "We need to talk." She said it the way someone says, "This isn't what it looks like," or "Let's be reasonable." I didn't move, just finished peeling, set the knife down. John followed behind her, slower, the papers folded in his hand now, worn at the creases already. "Maeve," she began, "this can't be serious." "It is," I said. "You want us to move out? Just like that?" "I want my home back." She blinked. "You live here." "No," I said quietly. "I exist here. I navigate around your schedule, your furniture, your rules. I eat in silence. I sleep beside your son's storage boxes. And I'm told, by you, that I should be grateful." John ran a hand through his hair. "It's not like we haven't helped." "Helped?" My voice was calm, even. "You mean the groceries? The box of tea bags you picked up last month?" "I fixed the gutters," he added, too quickly. "And in return, I gave you space, shelter, heat, water, a safe place to land. That was a kindness. But kindness," I said, "is not the same as surrender." Linda looked at me sharply. "You're being vindictive." "No," I said, meeting her eyes. "I'm being clear." She folded her arms. "You could have talked to us." "I did," I said. "You didn't hear me. You're going to turn your back on your family? You turned your backs first, the moment you tried to write me out of my own story." John spoke then, quieter. "What happens next?" "You have 30 days," I said. "That's more than fair. You'll receive the notice in writing again, by mail and by hand. After that, I'll do what I have to." Linda opened her mouth, but nothing came. I stood up slowly. My knees ached a bit, but I didn't show it. "I'd like to sit in the living room now," I said simply. They moved aside without a word. I walked past them and sat in the armchair by the window, my armchair, which I'd quietly returned from the garage that afternoon with Derek's help. He'd carried it in without asking why, just watched me gently drape the quilt over the backrest and said, "It suits this spot better than the leather one." For a few minutes, I just sat. The house around me quiet, the weight in my chest lightening. Behind me, they retreated into the kitchen. And then I heard John's voice, low and frayed. "She's serious." And Linda's answer, brittle. "She always was." They forgot. They forgot I was never fragile, just patient. They began packing that weekend. Not openly, not with boxes in the hallway and loud discussions about where to go. No, that would have required dignity. Instead, it started with small disappearances. The blender vanished from the kitchen counter. A framed photo from the mantel was gone the next day. I noticed a suitcase by Derek's door, half-zipped, with T-shirts sticking out like the tongue of someone who'd just told a lie. I didn't comment. I let it unfold. This time, I didn't need to explain myself. They moved through the house differently now, careful, watchful, like tenants late on rent, avoiding the landlord. John spoke only when necessary. Linda stayed out of the kitchen. Even the dog seemed confused by the shift in air. She followed me more, curling up near my feet when I sat in the living room. On Monday, Abby stopped by again. She didn't knock this time. She stepped into the kitchen, took one look at me sitting in my chair with the newspaper, and said, "You did it." "I started it," I replied. "They're doing the rest." She sat down across from me. "They're leaving?" "They're packing." Her face was unreadable for a moment, some mix of pride, sadness, and disbelief. "They thought you'd never do it. They built their comfort on that assumption." She looked at me with something almost reverent. "You're not scared?" I shook my head. "Not anymore. Abby reached into her bag and pulled out a slim black frame. I had this printed. She handed it to me. It was a photo, the original from 1984. Paul and me, standing on the porch, holding the house keys. He was smiling in that half-laugh way he did when he was proud but pretending not to be. I had my hand on his chest and my other holding the envelope with the deed. The house behind us, freshly painted white. "I found the negative in your drawer last time," she said. "Thought you'd want it back where it belongs." I touched the glass. I do. That night, I hung it above the fireplace, where Linda's seasonal mirror had been. I'd taken it down without a word, left it leaned against the guest room bed. The house was starting to look like mine again. Each day brought a new small return. Tuesday. I found my pie tin in a plastic tub labeled Miscellaneous Kitchen. I washed it carefully and placed it back in the drawer where it belonged. Wednesday. Derek removed the bookshelf from my room. He knocked once before entering, said nothing, just hauled it out. Later, I saw it by the garage. Thursday. John tried to talk logistics, asked if I'd consider easing the timeline. "I already gave you grace," I said calmly. "Don't ask for more." He nodded. He didn't argue. By Friday, the mood in the house had shifted entirely. Quiet, yes, but not with tension anymore, with resignation, and maybe, in some strange way, respect. I cooked dinner for myself that evening, something simple, but hot. I set the table for one, with my good plate and a cloth napkin. The dog lay at my feet, snoring gently. Abby had texted, "Want to have lunch next week?" My treat. I wrote back, "Yes, I'd like that." In the hallway, Linda and John passed in silence, carrying taped boxes, side by side, but saying nothing. I sipped my tea and looked around the kitchen, still cluttered, still in transition, but finally, mine. The van pulled into the driveway on a gray Saturday morning. Not a moving truck, just John's old SUV with the back seats folded down and a borrowed trailer hitched to the back. I watched from the kitchen window as he stepped out, looked up at the house once, and then went around to open the rear hatch. Linda followed a few minutes later. She was dressed like someone going camping, though she hadn't set foot in the woods in years. Fleece, sneakers, hair pulled back too tight. Derek came last, his headphones looped around his neck, eyes down, carrying nothing. They didn't knock on my door. They didn't say goodbye. They just started loading. First the boxes, labeled Kitchen A, Bedroom B, Derek Books, Office J. Then the smaller furniture, the foldable desk, the white shelf that had displaced my sewing machine, the modular couch pieces Linda insisted were better for posture. I stood in the hallway briefly and watched them struggle to angle the biggest one through the front door. No one asked me to help. That was something. Around noon, I made lunch. Just for me. A turkey sandwich, an apple, and tea in my favorite mug, the one with the chip shaped like Texas. I sat at the small table in the kitchen where they used to corner me like a guest and looked out at the garden. The rain had stopped. The leaves were slick and golden. The dog rested nearby. No leash, no commands, just breathing slow and easy. I heard a loud thud from upstairs, then footsteps, then Linda's voice, sharp and tired. "Just put it in the trailer, Derek. We don't have all day." I didn't offer them water. I didn't pretend to be angry or kind or anything in between. I just let the house shift back toward its original shape, item by item, echo by echo. By 3 o'clock, most of it was gone. The SUV looked full. The trailer was tied with ropes and covered in a plastic tarp. John was double knotting something when I stepped out onto the porch. He looked up. "We'll come by later in the week for the last few things." I nodded once. "The notice says 30 days. You have 3 left." He swallowed hard. "We'll be done before that." I looked over his shoulder. Linda was wiping down the dashboard of the SUV. Derek was kicking a stone with his shoe. "You have a plan?" I asked. Not unkind. Just direct. John nodded, eyes tired. "An apartment near Greenfield." "Month to month?" "It's a start." He opened his mouth like he might say something else. Maybe an apology, maybe not. But closed it again. Then turned and walked back toward the car. Linda didn't speak to me at all. She got into the front seat, slammed the door, and stared straight ahead. I stood there until the engine started, until they backed out, trailer bumping behind them, and drove down the street without looking back. When they were gone, I didn't cheer. I didn't cry. I just went inside. The house was quiet. Empty in some places, still messy in others. A few scattered things. Hangers, a lamp, 2 opened boxes of cereal in the pantry. The guest room was half cleared, the mattress bare. I walked through every room slowly, not inspecting, remembering. In my bedroom, the sewing chair was back where it belonged. In the living room, my cross stitch hung again above the mantel. Bless this house. Crooked, a little faded, but home. At dusk, I opened the windows. Let the air move through every hallway, every corner. It didn't smell like them anymore. It smelled like me. The silence was different now. It didn't feel heavy or watchful or tense the way it had for so long. It felt earned, like a room exhaling, like the kind of quiet that comes not after someone leaves, but after someone comes back. I spent the next few days not cleaning, but restoring. I brought the good dishes down from the high shelf and placed them gently in the cabinet where they used to live. The white plates with the blue trim, the teacups with hairline cracks. Only I knew how to hold just right. I found Paul's old radio in the garage, still dusty, but working. I tuned it to the jazz station he used to leave on low while he read the paper. I let it play while I swept. In the living room, I brought out the knitted throw I'd folded away when Linda said it didn't go with the aesthetic. It went with me. I placed it over the back of the armchair, the one by the window, where the afternoon sun warmed the fabric just so. That chair had a dent from Paul's wallet in the right side cushion. I used to tease him about sitting lopsided. He never noticed. I left the dent. It was mine now. The dog, Pepper, though they rarely called her anything but hey, had settled into a rhythm too. She followed me from room to room, lay beside my bed at night, waited for me in the hallway each morning. No leash, no orders, just presence. One afternoon, Abby came by with a paper bag and a new book. "You look different," she said as I opened the door. "I feel different." She stepped inside and immediately sighed. "It smells like you again." "Is that good or bad?" "It's home," she said simply. We sat at the kitchen table, my table, and shared tea and peanut butter cookies I'd made the night before. She told me about her finals, about a class she hated but couldn't drop, about a boy she liked but didn't trust yet. I listened, fully, without needing to multitask or pretend not to be in the way. And when she finished, she reached across the table and took my hand. "I was scared for you," she said softly. "I thought they were erasing you." "They were trying," I said. But I remembered something they didn't. "What?" I looked around the kitchen. The worn counters. The window with the lace curtain. The small crack in the linoleum near the sink. All of it familiar. All of it mine. I was here first. She smiled, but it wasn't a happy smile. It was something deeper. The kind of smile people wear when they understand, not just agree. You're stronger than them, she said. No, I said. I was just quiet longer. After she left, I walked through the house again. In the guest room, the last of the cardboard boxes were gone. I'd donated what they'd left behind. Mismatched socks, expired coupons, a yoga mat no one had ever used. I kept only one thing. A photograph of Derek as a toddler, sitting on Paul's shoulders, both of them laughing. It wasn't for them. It was for me. A reminder that even the ones who disappoint us still came from moments of joy. I placed it on the hallway table beside the small lamp Paul had rewired himself. A little shrine to what was real, what was mine, and what would remain. That night, I lit a candle. Not for drama, not for ritual, just because I wanted to. And in that glow, I sat in my chair, wrapped in my blanket, in my house, and felt, for the first time in a long while, not like a woman holding on, but like a woman who had already let go of what didn't deserve her. The letter came a week later. Plain envelope. No return address. Just my name, written in John's careful block handwriting. Inside, 2 pages. Folded once. No apologies, no confessions. Just logistics. They'd found a place. Month to month as planned. Close enough to Derek's school. It's not ideal, but we're adjusting, he wrote. Thank you for the time you gave us. He didn't ask to come back. He didn't suggest a holiday visit. He didn't mention the deed or the law office or the way Linda had looked at me like I was a stranger with a weapon in her hand. And that was fine. I placed the letter in a drawer beneath the birth certificates, utility records, and the folded flag from Paul's service. It didn't belong in the folder with the deed, but I didn't throw it away. Some endings deserve to be archived, not cherished, not framed, just acknowledged. A few days later, Abby helped me move the last shelf back into place. We dusted the top together, laughing at how many times Linda had tried to get me to declutter. People always want to clean up things they don't understand, I told her. They think simple means better. But some of us keep things because we remember them. She nodded. You're allowed to take up space. No one gives you permission for that, I said. You just stop asking. That night, I made shepherd's pie from memory. No recipe, just hands and years and instinct. I used the deep casserole dish I hadn't touched in months, the one Linda kept in a box labeled dated. I set the table for one, poured a glass of water, turned on Paul's radio. The house was warm, lived in, mine. I still don't lock the bedroom door at night. I still rise early, fold towels in thirds, water the ferns in the corner. Some habits never leave you. But now, every room I walk into feels like it knows me again. Sometimes I wonder if John ever tells people about what happened. I wonder if Linda describes me as stubborn or difficult when the topic comes up. Maybe she tells the story like it was a misunderstanding, a phase, a sad situation where the old woman got confused and kicked them out. Let them tell it that way. Let them soften it until it sounds reasonable. But Abby knows. And I know. I didn't kick them out. I remembered my name, and I spoke it out loud. So if you're reading this, if you're in a quiet corner of your own house unsure if you still belong, let me remind you, you do. And if you need permission to take up space again, let this be it. You're not in the way. You are the reason the walls were built. Stay and make them remember that.